think we're live. Okay, it is very early in the morning. It's Sunday, July 11th, 2021, and this is today's video message for my friend Lilla, who lives around and around the world while I'm lying lonely, to quote a song. While I live here in the good old US of A in the state of Oklahoma. Today's message, Lilla, if you're watching, I can't talk today, is, well, I don't know. I've been sitting here the last several hours trying to think of something to talk about for this video, and nothing concrete is coming to me. I've kind of just been thinking about a bunch of random stuff, with no connection to anything. I've been listening to a lot of music while I sit here. Bands like Semisonic, Soul Asylum, Harvey Danger, REM, and then earlier, yesterday, I was listening to Bjork, Tori Amos, Mike Doty, and Mike Doty's band, Soul Coughing, and some other stuff like King Crimson and some other bands. And I've just been sitting here thinking about all kinds of just random stuff that's rattling in my brain. Everything from you know, the right wing or nutcases all thinking door-to-door vaccines are a plot against them, to the discourse discussing things like bisexual erasure, to more lighter things that are not social issues, things like the album 808s and Heartbreak, which is an electro pop album by Kanye West, that he did years ago, and how that album alone kind of changed hip-hop and rap after it, and created an entire kind of mood in that sound, and inspired a lot of artists, most notably Drake. And it's my favorite Kanye album. It doesn't sound anything like his other stuff, and really it doesn't, for its time, sound like anything else that was out at that time. I mean, it influenced a lot of like rappers and R&B artists. One could say like it changed everything in those genres after, and everything now in R&B and rap owes a huge nod of influence to it. But at the time, I believe it came out in 2008, maybe 2000. Yeah, it was 2008, because he was going through a lot at the time, and then he came out with My Dark, Beautiful, Twisted Fantasy in about 2010, 2011, which is another great album, and is, you know, widely considered to be one of the greatest hip-hop albums, and which I agree with. It's a fantastic album. And I've been sitting here thinking about other genres of music, like jazz. I've been thinking about Miles Davis. I was thinking about how last summer when I had a job, I was driving a lot, and an album I listened to a lot on the road was Miles Davis' album, Miles Smiles, which is probably my favorite album of his, and has some great songs. It's when you get into an artist like Miles, who put out a lot of I hate using the word content for art. Damn it. I hate how that's influenced how we talk about art and call it content. When you talk about an artist like Miles, who put out a lot of work, people tend to focus on certain ones. People tend to focus on Kind of Blue, which is arguably the most successful jazz album in history. Or they talk about, something like Birth of the Cool, or Bitches Brew, or In a Silent Way, or Sketches of Spain. But I don't think Miles Smiles gets really talked about as much with those albums, especially since it's not as different from what he was doing around that time, and especially when it's not the later stuff he was doing that was very experimental and was pushing jazz into extreme, like, avant-garde territory and incorporating elements of funk and rock like he did on later albums, such as Bitches Brew and the stuff he was doing like after that, like On the Corner. Miles was a pioneer for sure, and did something pretty interesting with the genre and pushed it into incorporating influences from other things, whereas other jazzmen of his era were also pushing jazz forward into their own unique directions, like Coltrane. John Coltrane was always a very innovative, pioneering guy, and his work, especially at the end of his life, the stuff he was doing was the most extreme, I think, experimental stuff jazz had ever seen at that point. Which, when you look at his earlier stuff, it starts in a more conventional place. You look at earlier albums like Blue Train, that's compared to later things like Equinox, or the stuff he was doing towards the very end of his life, tracks like Jupiter, night and day. And he pushed it his own way, and he took it in a very freeform direction and pushed freeform jazz out there and popularized it. Much like another great jazz guy, Ornette Coleman, had been doing for a while. Ornette Coleman is one of my very favorite jazz musicians. He's a guy who started in the 50s. He's from Dallas, and he tried to do the tour scene, but he'd always been so unconventional in his approach to timing and phrasing, and had a more free-form, idiosyncratic approach that other musicians around him couldn't quite get right away. That he had a lot of trouble, like, really starting his career and really getting a name for himself, because no matter who he played with early in, like, jazz clubs, he couldn't quite find people that gelled with his style, because they were playing in the more traditional style of jazz for that time, and Coleman was always marching to the beat of his own drum. He had a very free-form approach to melody and to harmony, and into a style that he eventually called harmolodic. Kind of combining harmony and melody into a very free-form, very free jazz, avant-garde kind of style that, and a lot of people even now, when they hear the word free jazz, Ornette Coleman's like the first name a lot of people think of. Not to say he was the only one doing freeform jazz at that time or even later, but he was one of the originators of it, along with Coltrane, as well as some other people like Don Cherry, who started pretty much his career playing with Ornette Coleman, and was on Ornette's albums. And you also had the free jazz pianist Cecil Taylor, who was doing some really wildly interesting and inventive stuff on piano. And then you had Sun Ra, who's always been a very exploratory kind of jazz guy, who was also doing his own kind of avant-garde kind of thing. Another stuff I've been thinking about is just random stuff like my childhood. I was thinking about memories I had, like watching the same Disney movies over and over and over again when I was a kid. I had several VHS copies of movies that I would wear out when I was 4 and 5 because I loved them so much. And then when I was by myself, I would reenact scenes from them. I would act them out as if I was the character. Which is something I did a lot as a kid. I liked to pretend I was in the movie, that I was the character, and I would act the story out. But I would never do it in front of people because I was always painfully shy and would be embarrassed if somebody like walked in on me doing that, which my mother was always doing. She'd always like just barge in and catch me, playing pretend, and would embarrass me. And other stuff, I was thinking about stuff in high school, the stuff I was into. I got into a lot of artists that I still like now in high school. I got into Frank Zappa and Bob Dylan, Tom Waits, the Velvet Underground, who are all people that are great and amazing and who I still listen to now. And the art I was getting to, I became a fan of Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol as a person was horrible, but he produced some very interesting art that I still aesthetically find pleasing, even if I know he was an asshole. And I was thinking about other stuff, like the people I knew. Like, I had some friends that, were great, and then some of them just passed away, passed out of my life, that I never saw again. And I've been thinking about other things, such as, my friends in the trans community and the bullshit they deal with from cis people, who kind of just try to erase them or deny that their true gender, or tell them they're really not a woman or not a man. And I, empathize with them because, one, that's bullshit, and two, it comes from such a place of willful ignorance and refusal to accept the truth about these people and their real lives and their real identities. And nobody should be made to feel that way. Nobody should be made to feel like they're not valid, that they are not who they say they are, that they can't be believed to be who they say they are. That's just bullshit. And other things I'm thinking about today, or should I say yesterday, since it's now early hours of Sunday. I was thinking about how last year I got into a car accident and I almost died by hitting a tree, which didn't do anything. I walked away from that with a couple of scratches, which was amazing, honestly, and which may or may not have made me rethink my atheistic views. Thinking about truck stops in the middle of nowhere, which I've stopped at a lot driving across the country, and how they would always have truckers come in, and I would always be playing classic rock, which I like classic rock, so it never bothered me. The only thing that bothered me if I go somewhere is they're just playing really shitty, like, corporate music, like terrible, like, sellout pop or sellout country music, which I really hate. Not to say I hate pop music or the top 40 or anything. There's a lot of stuff coming out today. It's very good music. I'm talking about the stuff that certain artists put out that's just there to make money. Music that's made purely for the aim of financial success is bad music to me. It's shitty music, and I hate it. And there's even artists I like that have put out things I feel like they were half-assing. And, it makes me wish they would, try harder, I guess you could say, or care more. And I think a lot of artists, that even the ones that do care about art, sometimes get burnt out and sometimes will put out stuff that, their heart's not really into. I think that's common. And other things I'm thinking about are all kinds of stuff. I'm thinking about the inventor, Nikola Tesla, and how he does not get the due he deserves, because he was truly a genius. And I'm thinking about the lunacy of the Bible and how people actually believe that stuff and have for the last 2,000 years. I'm thinking about how lonely parking lots look in the middle of the night when you're just sitting there and you're just kind of looking out and there's nobody around. There's kind of this lonely feel to everything, this kind of lonely atmosphere to it, which it reminds me of that painting by Edward Hopper, Nighthawks at the Diner, which perfectly captures that kind of middle of the night, lonely, melancholy feel. And by the way, Hopper is one of my favorite painters. He's actually my favorite realist painter. His stuff always had a great kind of atmospheric tone to it. He always painted stuff like rooms that were empty but had looked like someone just walked out of frame, or like very nice houses on beaches, things like that, in small towns. I just really like Hopper's style and his aesthetic. But he's my favorite of the realist painters. And I'm thinking about Picasso and his style of painting. I was thinking about Cubism and the very expressionistic way in his use of lines and color and form. And Picasso is one of my very, very favorite painters ever. He's a big influence and inspiration to me, and has been my whole life. I remember as a kid seeing Picasso paintings and thinking they were so great. And just very bold. I'd never seen anything like that before, and I remember that having a deep impact on me. And I'm thinking about how I used to watch old movies all the time, like movies from the 30s and 40s and 50s, and how there was a phase when I was about 16, 17, 18, when I would just sit home and watch movies all day, and my mom would watch them with me, and it's one of the few things that we bonded over, and one of the few things that we both like. My mother and I have such different tastes and everything that there's very few things that we both like. And even things that are similar or from similar time periods we differ on. For example, we both like classic rock. However, my mom is the type that likes classic rock, like bands like Bad Company or Free, or Aerosmith, and I'm more into the classic rock stuff of Talking Heads, Cheap Trick, Devo, The Cure, more punk, post-punk, early alternative stuff. I'm fans of Modern English, Susie and the Banshees, Wire, bands of that sort. I'm a fan of experimental kind of rock music, like the Velvet Underground, and Frank Zappa, Mothers of Invention, Captain Beefheart, King Crimson, bands like that. But I also like more simplistic, straightforward rock too. I like John Mellencamp. I like Bob Dylan. I like some of Eric Clapton's music. I like a lot of different kinds of music. I like everything from show tunes to hip hop to jazz to classical music to reggae and ska to pop music to experimental music and a lot of different stuff in between. And I was thinking about that too. I was thinking about the composer and musician John Cale, and how he's very diverse in his music. He started as a member of the Velvet Underground, and as a solo artist, he's performed a lot of different music, everything from rock music to classical music to very experimental pieces, very interesting, and very prolific. And he also produced a lot of music and got a lot of bands their start. He produced the Stooges' first album and gave them their start, and he produced Patti Smith's first album, Horses, which jump-started her career. And as a big fan of both Patti Smith and Iggy Pop, that's really cool that he started their career. John Cale's a really interesting guy. He's a Welsh, but he's worked in the U.S. for many, many years, and he's very, very interesting. How he looks at things. Sorry for rambling. I'm just, these are all just things I think about in a given day, just random, point-to-point things. Plus, once again, it's the middle of the night. I've been up since 11 a.m. yesterday, and I'm really tired. So that's contributing to my random mood. something else I was thinking about yesterday was I was thinking about how I appreciate you just listening, how I can just ramble on and you watch these videos and you don't mind me just, blabbing forever about nonsense. And you actually like it, and I appreciate that. And I was just thinking about that you're a very good listener. You're very empathetic and you're very loving, and part of that, part of love is showing that you do care and being there for people and listening to them. And good listeners, I think, are hard to find. I think most people just want to hear themselves talk. They don't really want to listen. And even though I'm incessantly talking right now, it's only because I have to record this and I can't talk with you in real time. So I normally don't talk this much or ramble on about myself, but in the interest of producing these videos for you, I've kind of started doing that a lot. I guess that's the point of vlogging, or vlogging as they call it, I guess, is to give yourself a little platform to just talk about whatever you want to talk about. I guess that kind of feeds the self-centered little streak in everybody that we all have. I think all of us have a little tiny little part of ourselves that wants to just feel free to be able to just talk about what they want and just do what they want to do. Anyway, I've been rambling for over 20 minutes. Wow. But it's just to give you an idea of just in a simple day the kind of stuff I think about and the various topics that I arrange through in my head. And it's not just music. I mean, I think about literature and other art a lot. I think about writers. Being a writer, I think about writing all the time. In fact, this channel I have actually used to be a very predominantly writing focused channel. I used to do book reviews, and sometimes I would read poetry I had written and stuff on here, which I'm thinking about doing that again. I don't think I told you this, but I'm thinking about kind of going back to that, making this more of a writing focused channel again and doing videos like this, but to everybody, more general videos about reading and discussing books and some other ideas that I've kind of slowly been thinking about. I think I'd like to do that because over time I started that way and I was very prolific. I put out tons of videos on like books and reading and stuff, and I kind of got sidetracked for doing other stuff or posting like goofy little snippets of stuff, and then I started getting into filmmaking and I started posting short films, and I kind of steadily over time went away from that into posting more the kind of stuff I post now, which is more either short films that I've done in the last few months or last year, or I'll post like little jokey, humorous little things that are just nonsense. And I'd still do those, but I think I'd like to go back to doing a more consistent writing focused stuff because that's my brand. I'm a writer, I want to talk about writing, and that was always the goal of this channel was to do that. Let's just talk about writing and kind of develop a platform for that. Because I've been doing it all this time, even when I wasn't doing videos about writing. Even when I wasn't really doing YouTube very often, I was still writing. I was still, churning out poems and short stories and essays and attempting to write novels I never finished. That's always been going on in the background. Even if this channel started kind of straying away from that over time because of life and stuff was going on and moving a lot and kind of getting busy with work, to the point where I stopped posting videos regularly for a long time. And I've only just now, since I've started doing these videos for you, Lilla, I've started producing daily videos again. And now doing that has kind of made me want to do other videos, like more frequently as well. I mean, I'll still do these message videos because I love doing them and I love talking to you. I mean, you are one of my best friends after all. But I think I'm really starting to seriously think about going back to really doing what I always wanted to do with this channel, which is talk about writing stuff, but also just do some other ideas of it. I mean, I want to make some more films. I want to post more experimental stuff I'm doing, and have it be a more artistic channel overall, as opposed to just not just the stuff I used to do, like video stuff, or writing stuff, but doing more artsy stuff and posting that too. I think that would be interesting. Because I'm wanting to make some more films. It's been a little while since my last one, and I kind of want to start doing that and focusing on that too, while still continuing to write, and then sharing that on here with that, with everybody. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about the past few weeks. And in between all that, I'm thinking about the usual random stuff, everything from astronomy stuff to history stuff to music stuff to writing stuff, or thinking about particular books and writers like James Joyce. I think of his stuff a lot. I think of Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake and the ambition and complexity of those novels, and or thinking about Thomas Pynchon and his ambitious, complex, insane, sprawling, epic novels like Gravity's Rainbow. Stuff I think about on average, and I think about other art too. I think about filmmakers and movies a lot. I think about like the French New Wave movies that were done by people like Godard and Francois Truffaut and people like that. And I think about more modern filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and Woody Allen. And I think about indie music, indie rock, and indie bands that are doing music. And some of my favorite bands are more in that style as well. Or have been influenced by classic, more alternative punk bands like the Pixies. And I listened to an audiobook a few months ago about the whole indie scene and the alternative punk scene, how that got started, called Our Band Could Be Your Life, and it was a very good book, and it discusses several 80s bands on the underground scene and how they influenced mainstream rock music. And it talks about how from the early 80s, from when punk had gone into post-punk and early alternative started, and how there was this whole DIY thing, and how punk influenced a bunch of great bands to come out. And it discusses a lot of varied, very stylistically different, but very good bands like Black Flag, Mission of Burma, Descendants. I think it talks about Descendants. Dinosaur Jr. I'm trying to think of those. It covers a lot of bands. Sonic Youth. Shit, I can't think. But it was really interesting. It was a very good book. Minutemen is talked about a lot. There's a lengthy chapter on them. Basically bands that I listened to a lot in high school and that I still regularly listen to. I still listen to Husker Du. I still listen to Pixies. I still listen to Sonic Youth. I still listen to Black Flag. All these bands are bands I listen to daily, just about. And because I'm a big fan of that stuff. I'm a big fan of like 80s alternative or punk, which in the 80s they were kind of almost the same thing. I mean, you had different kinds of alternative. You had more stuff on one end that was more artsy and experimental, like Mission of Burma or This Heat, bands like that. And on the other end of the spectrum, you had more like the hardcore punk. You had Husker Du, you had Black Flag, you had Bad Religion, which are all good. And then in between, you had like Sonic Youth kind of was in the middle. They had a very abrasive, extreme sound, but had a very artistic intentions. They were like an arty, cerebral, like thinking man's punk. They weren't afraid to be weird and unstructured and experimental and fuck around with things like tuning and and stuff like that. Very interesting. Sonic Youth is one of my favorite bands just ever. Like, they're great, and they had a very prolific run as a band. And I mean, they lasted like close to 30 years. I think that's amazing. And they put out a lot of good albums in that time. My favorite album of theirs is probably an album they did called Dirty, which was released in 1992. That's the album I listen to the most by them, but I like all their stuff. So anyway, again, I didn't mean to drift back into that, but I think about music a lot. Books and music are probably the things that come up most in my mind. But anyways, I'm sorry to ramble on for this long. I know I'm probably boring you. I hope I'm not, but I feel like I might be. As you can see, I'm back in the car. I'm about to drive home and then go to bed, so that'll be good. But I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll probably post a shorter and less boring video than this one. Part of the length of this was just reflecting me just talking about how diverse the random crap I think about is. I just went into extreme detail about it to give you kind of a fuller picture. But yeah, this is I guess that's it for now. I've talked your ear off, so to speak. But I'll be back tomorrow to post Monday's video. Yeah. For a second there, I was thinking this was like Sunday going into Monday. I was like, wait, is this early Monday morning? And then I realized, like, no, yesterday was Saturday. This is early Sunday. Way early. Probably about 2 or 3 a.m. now. Anyway, but yeah, I'll be back tomorrow for Monday's video. Enjoy this long, ranty, rambling, aimless garden path video. Till then. So I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to me talk endlessly. You're an amazing friend. You're truly a saint for putting up with me. And I just want you to know I appreciate it. You're a great friend. So I'll be back tomorrow, and I will see you next time.